Before calling our resource person for this session on the stage, I would like to call upon research scholar Ainul Bari from Department of English to introduce our resource person.
Assalamu alaikum, good evening. The resource sir, economics in the Department of West Asian and North. Earlier, he has also worked as an assistant professor in the Department of Economics, University of Kashmir, Srinagar. His research areas include applied econometrics, economic growth, and energy economics. Dr. Tariq has published various research papers. He has obtained his PhD from the Department of Economics, Aligarh Muslim University, and his research topic was like the role of microfinance in poverty alleviation in India. Dr. Tariq has also completed a number of research projects funded by various government prestigious organizations. Dr. Tariq has published around 20 research papers in the areas of microfinance, energy and economic growth of the Middle East region in these prestigious journals like Syed, Springer, Wiley and Routledge. And he has also presented many research papers in national, internationals level. He has also contributed a number of book chapters and presented more than 13 research papers at various conferences and seminars. Furthermore, Dr. Tariq has been invited to deliver lectures and talks at various institutions, showcasing his expertise and ability to communicate complex economic concepts effectively. His engaging presentations and insightful discussion have proven to be invaluable resources for students, researchers, and fellow academicians. We are happy to welcome and have him with us for this research methodology workshop to share his vast expertise. Dr. Tariq will speak on the topic sampling techniques. Over to you, sir.
For the nice introduction. My topic of talk is sampling techniques. So before formal discussion about the sampling technique, I would like to discuss few other things that are related with the sampling technique or sampling design in general. Okay? So sampling design is basically a broad things within which we choose various sampling methods or sampling techniques that are available for selection of final sample. Now, sampling design, as we know, is a broad strategy of selecting sample from the wider population. Within that broad strategy, there are sampling techniques, various sampling techniques. Some are statistical techniques and some are non-statistical techniques. Now, the purpose of drawing a sample from any population, any given population, is always representation. Okay? So sample is like a representation of population. We choose sample because we believe that the chosen sample is representative of the wider population. Okay? There are some confusions regarding the definition of population and sample. We use these words in common sense, in common usage. Okay? Now, as far as definition of population in statistical theory is concerned, it is a theoretical idea. There is nothing like real population. Okay? Population is always a theoretical idea. For researchers who are engaged in the statistical exercise, because ultimate purpose of doing sampling is to do some statistical exercise. Okay? So in statistical sense, when we look at the population, okay, it is always a abstract idea. It is a theoretical idea. There is nothing like real population. Even if you are going for complete enumeration. Okay? In textbook, most of the time you will find that when we are doing complete enumeration of all the items, it is population. Okay? But it is not a population in strictly statistical sense. In statistical sense, population is always a theoretical idea. There is nothing like real thing, real population. Okay? So in census we use word population because census is a exercise where we do complete enumeration of all the items. Okay? Even the census data, suppose you are using census data for some exercise, the whole data, okay, that is a sample. In statistical sense, that population figures are samples. Okay? Now, in theoretical sense, population includes all the existing items, okay, and unrealized items. When we take set of these two existing things, for example, human population, okay, and unrealized or future values, okay, when we combine these two things, that is the statistical population. So you must know the meaning of statistical population, because in every survey, the real population, the real benchmark is not a enumeration of items. It is statistical population. Okay? And statistical population is not a real thing. It is a theoretical idea. So you must know this. Right? Even if you have listing of all the items, you have data of all the items, complete enumeration is there, still that is a sample. It is not a population. Okay? Next is sampling. So sample, as you know, is a subset of that population. Okay? Subset from the representative population. We take some representative items from the whole, okay, and then we use that sample for the final statistical analysis. Now the purpose is to generalize those values that are derived from sample for the ultimate use for the population. We are ultimately concerned with the population. We need values for the population, okay? But given the various constraints, we have sample in hand. We cannot go for complete enumeration. Either it is costly, or as I said, that it is not feasible, because there is nothing like real population. There is nothing like complete existing population. Okay? So in number of cases, complete enumeration is impossible. We cannot enlist all the items. Okay? We take sample. We take sample for these reasons. There are a number of other constants that why we are taking sample. Now one more reason for taking sample is that in number of cases, we get more accurate result from sample than population complete enumeration. Okay? How is it possible that you are getting better result from sample than the complete enumeration? Now when we go for complete enumeration, there may be budget constraint. Okay? There may be constraint with respect to involvement of humans in the whole survey process. Okay? So there is high chance that you will get your population enlisting exercise will be problematic in that way, because you have limited resource, in terms of finance, in terms of human resources. Okay? So complete listing is problematic. The better way is that we can select few people, few items from the population. Okay? Then we can do a very careful, deeper data analysis, data collection exercise. Okay? So in this way, in number of cases, sampling is a better strategy. Okay? Even if you are listing most of the existing things, okay? As I said that it is not a population in real sense, so still that is a sample. Okay? Even in listing of number of items, most of the items, okay? Still it is not a statistical population, it is a sample in a statistical sense. So better strategy is that we should concentrate on few items, okay? Items by which we can draw good result, good estimates. Okay? Now this is the these are few things about what is the meaning of population and what is the role of sample in that. Now in empirical exercise, either we are engaged in the experimental research, okay? Like in most of the natural sciences, or in some areas of economics, psychology, or education. We do experimental exercise. Okay? In most of the social sciences, we are doing observational exercise. We are engaged in the observational exercise where we don't have control over the phenomena. Simply we can observe phenomena. Okay? We can gather data and then we can drive results. We don't have control over the experiment. Okay? So in both the cases, in experimental research as well as in the observational research, there is need of sample. There is need of sampling. Even in the observational scenarios like time series data, if you are observing some phenomena over the period of time, okay? Even in that case, there is idea of sample and population. In case of time series data, suppose you are collecting something over the period of time, okay? It is known as, population is known as stochastic process, okay? And then we have representative sample in hand. Suppose we are doing some exercise with the given GDP number of India. Okay? So you have GDP figure, suppose starting from 1991 up to recent. Okay? We have all the data. From 90 up to recent time, we have all the observations. Observation of 1991, 1992, up to 2022, the recent available figure. Okay? Now, there is underlying population for this data. Now, that underlying population is all those unrealized values of GDP. All those unrealized values of GDP are basically population, and there is a special different name in time series which is stochastic process. Okay? So even in time series data, even in time series exercise, there is concept of population and sample. So now when we go for, finally when we are going for sampling and survey, okay? Before doing survey exercise, you must look at certain things. You must look at the core objective of your research. Okay? The ultimate sampling technique depends upon the objective of study. One thing. Because given the objective, ultimately you can determine the sampling frame or the population underlying the objective. Okay? So first, look at your objective and identify the population. Okay? This is one thing. Now, once you have idea of population, okay, there are various choices for sampling. Broadly, there are two choices. One is statistical sampling, okay? Another is non-statistical sampling. Within statistical sampling, there are number of approaches. The most basic, benchmark method is random sampling. ये सब आपको टेक्स्ट बुक में भी दिया हुआ है, इसमें कुछ अलग नहीं. जो टाइप्स हैं, टाइप्स ऑफ सैम्पलिंग, यू कैन फाइंड अबाउट these things even in the textbook. Okay? So random sampling is an exercise where we select sample from the population, okay? And each and every object has a equal probability of participation. So chance of selection of each object is same. Okay? Random drawing from the population. This is the ideal scenario. If you are doing random sampling, okay, ultimately you can conduct statistical analysis without looking at other things. Okay? The main descriptive figures like mean, median, mode, or proportion, or in other studies, suppose you are involved in regression framework. Okay? So everything is valid without any rider. Okay? So you can use all the math. But random sampling, although it is a benchmark idea, it is difficult in practice. For random sampling, there are certain conditions. That population is homogeneous population. Okay? There is no heterogeneity. You have listing of all the items. There is a full sampling frame. Okay? From that sampling frame, you can randomly draw your sample. Okay? In most of the cases, the population is heterogeneous. There is heterogeneity in the population. Okay? Population, the size of population in number of cases is very large. So we cannot go for random drawing from the whole population. Okay? So one idea, the next idea is that we can divide whole population into strata, various strata, okay, which is stratified random sampling. Okay? So in stratified random sampling, what we do, we divide the whole population into number of strata. Okay? Then within strata, we do random sampling. So suppose you are dividing whole population into 10 different strata. Okay? Then within each strata, you have to choose randomly. Again, random sampling. Random sampling within strata. Okay? You have to take two decisions. One is the sampling size, because ultimately the generalization of your result depends upon two things. One is the type of sampling that you are using. Okay? Next is the size of sample. Size of sample is very important. You have to choose it carefully. How much sample is representative of population? Suppose the overall sample size is 100, overall population size is 100, and you are choosing sample of 2 objects. Okay? It is difficult to generalize from 2 objects. Okay? At least there must be 10%, 20%, or if as the sample size increases, okay, ultimately there is a drop in the size of sample. Okay? So for the population of 100 objects, you have to take at least 10 or 20%. Okay? But if the population size is suppose 1 lakh, okay, then there is no need of taking 10 or 20%. You can simply go for 1%. But ultimate decision about the sampling size depends upon number of other things. Okay? It depends upon the purpose in hand. It depends upon the cost involved. Okay? It also depends upon the level of generalization that is required. Okay? So there are a number of other things that you have to take into account when you take decision about the final sample. Okay? In case of stratified sampling, you also have to decide about the sample size of each strata, because you are dividing the whole population into number of strata. Okay? So ultimately you have to decide about the number of objects that you are going to draw from each strata. Okay? This is critical. Now, after stratified, next textbook example is cluster sampling. Okay? In cluster sampling, what we do, we again divide the population in number of groups, which are known as clusters. Okay? Then we randomly choose clusters from that. So suppose you are dividing whole population into 10 clusters. So you choose few clusters from those 10 clusters randomly. So randomization is at level 1. Here you are applying randomization at the first level, at the level of group. Okay? In case of stratified sampling, you are applying randomization at the second stage. First you are dividing whole population into strata. Okay? Then within strata we are doing randomization. We are drawing random sample. Okay? In case of clustering, we are dividing the whole population into groups, which are known as clusters. Then we are randomly choosing clusters. Okay? Then within those randomly chosen cluster, okay, we list all the items. Suppose you are choosing cluster number 1, 3 and 9. Okay? From cluster number 1, you have to take all the objects from cluster number 1 into sample. Okay? Then from cluster number 3, you have to choose all the items. Okay? This is the difference between stratified and cluster sample. Now, next broad type is non-statistical sampling method. There are number of approaches: convenient sampling, purposive sampling, or quota sampling, snowball sampling. So those are methods for non-statistical exercise. If you are ultimately not concerned with the generalization, if your ultimate purpose is to find something for the sample, not for the population, you are not going to generalize your result, then you can go for non-statistical sampling. Okay? This is main difference. For generalization, you have to choose either random sampling or some variant of random sampling. What are the variants? Stratified sampling, cluster sampling, or any other method. Okay? Now, if your purpose is not generalization, but you are simply concerned with the sample itself, you need results only for the sample in hand, then you can go for non-statistical sampling. Generally we are concerned with the population. Okay? All are concerned with the wider population, not with the sample. Okay? But in some cases, it is difficult to do statistical sampling. Okay? Suppose the population is not known. The objects of population are not well defined. They are not known. Okay? So you didn't have any sampling frame. If the objects are not known, then you don't have any sampling frame. Okay? In the absence of sampling frame, you cannot go for statistical sampling. You have to rely on some non-statistical sampling. Now, if suppose you have a statistical sample in hand, as I said that if the sampling is random sampling, pure random sampling, okay, you can apply any statistical test. You can apply any statistical exercise on the sample. You can calculate mean. Mean of the chosen sample will be representative of the population. If that value, that descriptive value mean, satisfies some other criteria. इतना direct नहीं है. We have to conduct hypothesis testing, जो आपको शायद बाद में बताया जाए यहाँ पे या पहले हो जाए. So if your estimated value, okay, satisfies hypothesis testing criteria, then ultimately you can go for generalization. You can say that this value, this mean value is representative of the whole population. Now, it is not true with the non-statistical sample. If you are driving the mean value or mode value or suppose regression coefficient from any non-statistical sample, yeah, it is not a representative value for the whole population. It is simply true for the sample in hand. So this is some basic background of statistical and non-statistical techniques of sampling. Okay? Now suppose you are going for some exercise where you need empirical observations, where you need data. Okay? One approach is to go for survey. You can go for collection of your own data. Okay? Now, collection of data, especially for research scholars, even in number of cases for faculty members, is problematic because we have a very limited fund. Okay? We don't have that much of resource. So, in place of our own survey, what we can do, we can rely on some secondary survey. There are some very rich, detailed, nationally representative samples available from secondary sources, like various surveys conducted by NSSO, National Sample Survey Organization. Okay? They conduct survey for various dimensions, household surveys, okay, for consumption behavior, for other things, number of things, banking behavior, financial status of household. Okay? So you can look at, first you can look at secondary source. If somehow you can find survey data, unit level data from secondary source, okay, utilize that. Don't go for your own survey. If your purpose is generalization, because given your own resources, ultimately you will collect data that will not be representative of population in most of the cases. Now people are using Google form for collection of data, okay? From education or psychology or even from literature, they are sending Google form. In Google form, non-response is very high. Okay? When you send Google form, there are few responses. Okay? And non-response is very high. Now, if non-response is high, you cannot use that data. Now, the next problem is when you use Google form for data collection, you don't have any sampling frame. But I said that you need a well-defined sampling frame. From that sampling frame is listing of all the items from which you are going to draw your sample. Okay? Now, in such surveys, online survey like Google form, people generally don't have any enlisting. They don't have sampling frame. Without sampling frame, they are randomly sending their questionnaire to number of people. Okay? Then they are getting few responses. If non-response is high, okay, that sample is not representative of the population. Even if the non-response is 1% or very marginal, still you have to adjust your estimate for the non-response. अगर नॉन रिस्पॉन्स बहुत कम भी है तब भी स्टिल यू हैव टू एडजस्ट द फाइनली ड्राइव्ड वैल्यूज फॉर द नॉन रिस्पॉन्स. यू कैन नॉट यूज सिंपल mean value from the data. No, you have to adjust that mean value for the non-response. Okay? So these are few things that you must take care when you go for survey. Okay? So as I said that if secondary data is available from some other agency, okay, you can use that data. Now when you are using secondary data from other surveys, there are number of precautions that you must take. For example, suppose we are using data of NSSO. Okay? Now from the NSSO data, suppose you are trying to derive any mean value, mean consumption of India, mean value of consumption expenditure of India. So what we can do from NSS data, we can aggregate all the value, okay, and then we can divide the whole value by the population, by the total number. Okay? Ultimately, you will get the mean value of consumption. Simply addition of all the items and then division by the total number. Problem is that they are not doing simple random sampling. It is true that value is representative of population only if the sampling exercise is a random sample. Okay? But most of the surveys are complex surveys. They don't follow random sampling. Okay? If the sampling method is a variant of random sampling, it is not a random sampling, but variant of random sampling, then you have to use weight of the values. Now, what is weight? Weight is, suppose you are doing a random exercise, then each item has equal probability of participation. So weight of each item is same. You are drawing 10 items from population of 100, probability of selection of each item is same. Okay? So weight of all the item is same. But when you are doing stratified sample, okay, you have two different strata. Then you are selecting one object from first strata, second object from second strata. The probability of participation of each item is different. In first strata is different than in second strata. Now we have to adjust our estimate by this information. You have to adjust your mean value or any value. Even if you are calculating percentage, okay, you have to adjust you have to adjust for deviation from random sampling. If there is deviation from random sampling, you must adjust your values. Generally, what we are seeing even in economics, research scholars are using NSSO data, then they are going for regression analysis, okay, without any adjustment for the type of sampling used. That is completely wrong, because you are getting some other value. It is not a real value. Okay? So look at the type of sampling. Okay? In most of the cases, the sampling is different from random sampling. Okay? So first look at the type of sampling, then adjust your value. This is now suppose you are conducting your own survey. Okay? So in case of our own survey, most of the time the geographical area is very limited. So either we collect sample from any particular village or particular district, okay, and then we derive result for that. Okay? Here, first you must look at your objective. What is your objective? Whether your objective is to find something for that particular district, or your objective is to find a general find. Okay? If your objective is simply to derive estimate for that particular district, then it is fine. Okay? But in most of the cases, our hypothesis, our objective is for general behavior, for the wider population, not for the district. Okay? Now, if your sampling frame is district and you are drawing your sample from that district, you cannot generalize for other districts. Okay? You cannot make any statement that it is true for everyone. Okay? Avoid that. Always use your estimates for your population, not for other items. Okay? बहुत थेसिस जो होती हैं उसमें कई बार बड़े जनरल स्ट्रॉन्ग स्टेटमेंट लिखे होते हैं, ऐसा कि वो आपने जो काम किया उससे आपको सच में कुछ पता चल गया और वो सब के लिए सही है, ऐसा नहीं रहता। अल्टीमेटली there are limitations in almost all the empirical findings. Okay? Empirical finding is dependent upon number of things. The first thing is the population, underlying population. Okay? Empirical finding, if everything is proper, if sampling is proper, if your estimation is proper, okay, your estimates are simply representative of your population, the sampling frame that you have chosen. They are not representative for other things, for other people, for other objects. Okay, now we have few times we can go for interaction. Okay, so this was the formal talk. We can go for interaction. If you have question, if you have particular type of problem in your research, you can ask me. Okay, so the floor is open. If you have question, you
Sir,
can
my
ask.
name is Parveen Kumar. I'm research scholar from Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar University, Agra. My question is that what is the difference between cluster sampling and stratified sampling?
और भी क्वेश्चन जो है वो आप पूछ लें तो फिर एक साथ ही।
Assalamu alaikum, sir. I'm a research scholar from Jamia Millia. My question is, can you give some brief about purposive sampling and how we can analyze after the sampling technique we are using?
Now, as far as first question is concerned, try to explain what is difference between stratified and cluster. In both the cases, we divide the whole population to number of groups, okay, n number of groups. In both the cases, you are dividing the population into. In case of stratified, in the next stage, what we are doing, we are randomly selecting few objects from first strata, few objects from second strata, few from each strata. Okay? Randomly few objects from each strata. Okay? In case of clustering, first we are dividing the population into groups, then we are randomly selecting few groups. Suppose if there are total 10 groups, we are randomly selecting 3 groups. So these 3 groups are clusters for our sample. Then we are doing complete enumeration of all the objects of those 3 clusters. Complete enumeration of those 3 clusters. Okay, this is the difference. Now next is
Sir,
about.
sir, will you give any example?
Is there any difference between in stratified sampling is homogeneous or heterogeneous, or in cluster sampling we are using homogeneous or heterogeneous?
In textbook there are a lot of confusion.
Yes,
Okay?
sir, that's why I'm asking.
Textbooks are basically for exam purpose. Okay? They are not for doing some real exercise. Now, as far as division of population into groups is concerned, there is no difference. You have to divide your population into groups simply because there is heterogeneity. Population is heterogeneous. Okay? And there is division between rural and urban areas. So one strata is rural, other strata is urban. Now same is true for cluster. There is no such. Okay? The difference lies in the randomization. In case of stratified, we are doing randomization at the second stage. Okay? Within the group. Okay? In case of clustering, we are doing randomization at the first stage. We are randomly selecting clusters, or then we are going for complete enumeration. So there is no such sharp difference in cluster sampling and stratified. Now, purposive sampling, as I said, is a part of non-statistical sampling. Okay? Why we collect data from non-statistical methods? Because in some cases, it is not feasible. We don't have well-defined population, okay? Or there may be some other reason. We are basically involved in the statistical analysis. Okay? Now, one example of purposive sampling is that suppose your purpose is to look at the voters behavior. Okay? Election होते हैं तो उसमें वोटर्स बिहेवियर पता किया जाता है, और प्रेडिक्शन, इलेक्शन प्रेडिक्शन ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ वोटर्स बिहेवियर. यू कैन नॉट आस्क डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चन कि आपने किस पार्टी को वोट किया, ये आपने, ठीक है. तो वी गो फॉर एनालिसिस ऑफ वोटर्स बिहेवियर. नाउ इफ you have sampling frame, you have list of all the voters, so you have well defined frame. From that frame you can randomly select few voters, okay, and then you can note their choices, and ultimately you can find your result. Okay? The problem is that you cannot go for direct question. You cannot directly ask the voting choice. Okay? So the better strategy is that we can, if the opinion matters, then the better strategy is that we can take a sample of experts, not of voters. Okay? Now, when we take expert in the sample, okay, their opinion is more representative of the wider population. Okay? If you are going for simple random sampling or some variant of random sampling and final ultimate unit is voter, okay, then there may be problem with that. Opinion of expert matters more than the voter. Okay? But as I said, that sample size matters. As we increase the size of the sample, okay, ultimately this is law of large number in statistics, that as we increase the size of sample, as we move towards the population, ultimately the estimated value converges towards the true population parameter. Okay? तो अगर आपने सारे ही वोटर से पूछ लिया तो फिर तो सही रहेगा, okay? लेकिन वो भी नहीं हो सकता. You have to choose few. Okay? So in this case you can go for purposive sampling for such analysis. There, that is not an academic exercise. Okay? For academic exercise, I am saying that you must do statistical sampling. Okay? Wherever feasible. Okay? You must go for statistical sampling. Any other question?
Sir, we have one question in online. Nusrat Ali is asking, can we take the whole population if the size of population is small?
Can we take?
Can we take the whole population if the size of population is small? I guess she's asking about sampling.
If the size of population is small, okay, as I said earlier that there is nothing like the real population. In statistical sense, if you are doing statistical analysis, okay, the real population does not exist. The real population is a theoretical idea. It is a theoretical benchmark. There is nothing like real population. So we cannot, even if you are going for complete enumeration of all those items, you have few items, sample size of population is small, so you can go for complete enumeration. Still that is not a population, that is sample. Even the complete enumeration is sample, it is not a population.
Sir, another question is there. Imran Khurshid is asking, is sampling needed for every research?
So sampling is not needed for every research. Okay? We don't need sampling exercise. But as I said that even in the experimental data, even in the time series data, okay, there is underlying idea of population and sample. When we have over the time realizations of some phenomena and we are using that data for our analysis, that is different from, totally different from cross-sectional data. Okay? You are doing nothing, you are not collecting any sample, there is a process and we have realization of that process at different points of time. Okay? Even in that constant, because ultimately we use statistical analysis on that data. Okay? So there is idea of sample and population in that data. Population is known as stochastic process in time series data. There is different name for that, but still population is there. Population, in every empirical exercise, there is underlying population, even in experimental research.
Do we have any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Masood sir, for such an insightful lecture. Now I would like to request Mr. Abu Bakr to kindly present the workshop kit to our esteemed resource person, Dr. Tariq Masood. Thank you, Mr. Abu Bakr. Now I would request our respected warden, Dr. Kaf sir and Mr. Faizan Shabir to kindly present memento to our resource person. Thank you so much, sir. It was a treat to listen to your lecture, and it will definitely help us in our research pursuits. Thank you everyone for being here with us. With this, we conclude proceedings of day 4. We will meet inshallah tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. for another 2 lectures. Thank you very much. Have a good time.
Hello. तो साथियों, आप लगातार लेक्चर चल रहे हैं अलीगढ़ मुस्लिम विश्वविद्यालय में, और इन लेक्चरों को सुनने के लिए जो शोध कर रहे हैं छात्र, वो लगातार अभी अगले दिन और भी बेहतर और शानदार प्रोफेसर्स रहेंगे इस अभियान में, और सभी लोग जुड़ें और मनोज अलीगढ़ यूट्यूब को लाइक करें, शेयर करें, सब्सक्राइब करें। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।